and so tempted. Matter of fact, folks from all different sides, all over TV and social media and the media, write off whole groups of people that think differently than they do. We've become so tempted, even as Christians, to play that game. The culture is tempting us to play their game of writing people off and judging people who believe different and calling them names and thinking that the ones who matter are really the ones who are like us. That's not what this says. What it says is everyone from Jesus and Joseph back to Adam had their own story, and they're all connected to God's invitation to find new life in Jesus Christ. And they're all connected because every single human being bears in him or her the image of God. We learned that in the very first chapter of Genesis. Every human being bears the image of God. And God called him or her good. Maybe it's time that we read more genealogies. Maybe it's time that we remember that God's work encompasses way more than just us. Maybe it's time that we remember that God's love encompasses way more than just us. In fact, it encompasses everybody, even the ones that we would rather not love. Even the ones that have hurt us or hurt others. Even the ones who disagree with us about positions that we hold very dear. All people matter to God, we say here. All people matter to God the same. For those of us who like to think that we're preferred, that can be a very hard pill to swallow. But the text is clear. Through every generation, through every piece of God's work, God is working in the history of our world through people to bring the world back to the way God intended it to be, through the love and grace of Jesus Christ. And all people are invited to that glorious community and fellowship. All people. Because all people bear the image of God. The truth is, friends, we need each other. Republican, Democrat, Chinese, American, Mexican, Honduran, Libyan, Iraqi, we need each other. Not because some government somewhere says it or some government agency says it, but because God says that all people matter. And we're all part and all invited to Jesus as one human family. So let's challenge each other. Let's challenge each other to look in the eyes of those that we disagree with and see Jesus in them. Even if they're not acting like Jesus. Even if they don't believe like Jesus. I can promise you we don't always act like Jesus either. It'd be good for us to recognize. And maybe, just maybe, we can be a part of healing our world. One life and one relationship at a time. As we realize that there's not a person on this planet that doesn't matter. There's not a person on this planet that isn't a part of God's redemptive plan, that isn't invited to receive Jesus and live their lives following Him. I want to close with some words that were made famous by Isaac Newton, the one that we remember, the scientist who, I guess we say, discovered gravity, but I mean, really, it was already there and operating. I don't know that discovered's the right word. He explained it and began to make sense of it for us. Isaac Newton had an intellectual rival at the time named Robert Hooke. And they went back and forth a lot. Went back and forth through letters and argued things back and forth. And there was one occasion where Hooke was convinced that he had come up with something brand new, a concept that we now call diffraction, which Hooke claimed that he discovered. And Newton said, actually, This Jesuit priest from about 3 centuries ago, he actually wrote about what you're talking about. Made Hooke mad, and so it set off a lot of letters going back and forth between the two of them. And the final letter of the back and forth, I guess we rightfully call this Isaac Newton's mic drop. Because he says this: "What Descartes did was a good step. You have added much in several ways, and especially in taking the colors of thin plates into philosophical consideration. If I have seen further than you, it is because I've been standing on the shoulders of giants." Friends, none of us does anything by ourselves. We stand on the shoulders of ones who came before. We stand on their discoveries. We stand on their mistakes. What they have done impacts us. We simply don't just say, whatever happened 100, 200, 300 years ago, I don't have anything to do with it. Because it is us. Because this whole human family that God has created, all people matter to God. And their story impacts our story. Newton, not so gently, reminded Hooke that all of us are dependent on one another. We do not get through life making advances in knowledge, science, understanding, and living. We don't make it through life figuring all that out on our own. We stand on the accomplishments and failures of others. And one day, others will stand on our accomplishments and failures as well. Because we're all connected. We're all connected by the image of God. And we're all connected by the invitation of God in Jesus Christ. We are loved. We are loved more than we know. Every generation stands on the shoulder of the past when it comes to the mission of God's redemption. Paul tells us this, 1 Corinthians. When he's talking about the church, the body of Christ, he says, when one part hurts, we all hurt. When one part rejoices, we all rejoice. That explains why Officer Thine's death has been such a gut punch for all of us, whether we knew her or not. We're all part of the same family, invited forward by Jesus into God's mission. The only question is, what will you do with your invitation? In the midst of all of this is Jesus, at the center of all of our lives, calling us forward in God's grace. May we answer the call in the name of the one who has given the call. Thanks be to God. Lord Jesus, guide us. Teach us to love like you love. Teach us to see the image of God in all persons. Convict us where we have been judgmental, so that we can embrace and heal through the power of your Son. In your name, Jesus, we pray.